has God lost control? It's a blasphemous question to ask. How could God lose control? How could that which sustains us, how could that which has created everything in existence lose control? But we learned last week that there are those who are pretending to be God. Ezekiel 28, verses 1 through 9, it talks about this prince of Tyre. And this prince of Tyre, who is a Canaanite, and these Canaanites, who represent or are the Greco-Romans or the Caucasians, have done the world an injustice by pretending as if they are God. Now, it's not me saying it, it's not me trying to be mean, it's not the Holy Coptic Church teaching anybody to hate anybody, but we have to get down to the crux of the matter. We have to understand what is it that's taking place in our society today. Why are we the most religious people on the planet, yet we are still at the bottom of the totem pole?
Good question.
As our Baba, John Henry Clark, would say, we out-pope the Pope. We out Muhammad. Remember that?
Yeah.
You understand? And it's true. You understand? Everything is prescribed by everybody else. We do it better than the people who are actually prescribing it. But yet, we're the ones
Still catching hell.
Still not actually benefiting from that which we say to the world you're supposed to be doing. So it has to be something. We can't blame the Most High. That's not what this is about. Someone, something, some way, somehow, someone has stepped up and has placed themselves in the position of God. We looked at that last week, so we're not gonna fully dive into that again this morning. But I want to jump back into Papyrus 1 before we go into the battle sheaf to reiterate the reality that we as a people need to ultimately keep at the forefront of our minds. If we are serious about changing our destiny, if we're serious about this spiritual recovery, last week we talked about how our spiritual recovery has been hindered. But are we serious about this spiritual recovery? You cannot be serious about anything with regard to finding a solution if you don't know what the problem is. If we're going to keep dancing around what the problem is, if we understand that there's a system of global racism, white supremacy, and we don't want to address that. The minute you start talking about that, people say, no man, you're in the past. You know, Dr. Francis Cress-Welton, I really, we are blessed to have had people, guardians, like the likes of Dr. Francis Cress-Welton and Marimba Ani, Dr. Marimba, who's still here with us, and all of these great angels that have been sent for us have been telling us that we have been ignoring the problem. Dr. Amos Wilson said the same thing. He said the problem is racism, white supremacy. Dr. Francis Cress-Welton said, you have been lied to. She said that you're told that you live in a democracy. That's what we're told. We live in a democracy.
Freedom.
Right? Freedom. Right? But she said, you don't live in a democracy. You live in a system of racism, white supremacy. And they tell us that in the system of democracy, which they want us to believe that we're in, that there's some inconsistencies, that there's some things that don't quite work the way that they're supposed to. But we're going to work on that. We're going to get to that. Yes, every 5 years in this country, we're going to get to that. Every 4 years in America, we're going to get to that. Right? Every place where this democracy is supposed to be working, we're going to get to it. You know, we only have a limited amount of time. We got to this, though, but we didn't get to that. And it's this constant cycle of we're going to get to it. But it's not that there's an inconsistency in democracy. It is that there's a consistency in racism, white supremacy.
Come on.
Words of Dr. Francis Cress-Welton, I'm paraphrasing obviously. right? I don't say it as well as she does. But the main point is that you cannot solve any problem until you've identified it.
Right.
So what is the problem within our world today, whereby people are asking the question, has God lost control? Whether they actually formulate it in words or whether or not they act it out in their behavior. That's what we're going to talk about in part today. But in Papyrus 1, verse 198 of the 12th scroll, all right, we see something here that we need to slow down and look at. This book 12 is the book of the Tamarian or ancient African Adamite. Verse 198 on page 237, it says, Bismillah Rabbil Khaliqul Kareem, begin all things by way of the name of the Most High Heavenly One, and Nehri, who is the Creator, the Generous One. It says, O you who observes all existence, may these words please you. Even further, Greco-Romanized monotheism made it where its so-called custodians of the 3 sets of 12 invading dynasties did work to elevate their own status, whereby they began to teach the fictitious words such as that members of mankind of Europa were the physical manifestations of a supreme being. So this is what we discussed last week in Ezekiel 28.